Hello and welcome to TALRadio. At TAL, we connect those willing to give to those who are in need. My lovely listeners and my wonderful audience, you are listening and watching to a wonderful series on self-coaching. And whenever I say this word, you know very well who's going to be the guest of honor. Let's welcome Andrew Tallents. Andrew is a self-coaching expert and has coached thousands of CEOs and people at CXO's level across the globe. Andrew, welcome to TALRadio.
Hi, Sandy. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much. And talking about leaders, one thing that is very common that, I don't know if it is true or not, just correct me if I'm wrong, that your network is your net worth today. So talking about networking. So networking for leaders, we're going to focus on that, how to build and leverage your network. So let me start by asking you, what does networking mean in the context of leadership?
This is a really interesting point, Sandy. We've not really covered this much in the previous episodes, but we've talked about the loneliness of leadership and how many leaders are always trying to prove that they can do things on their own without help. They're very proud. They don't want to show weakness. So the very fact that if we have a network of people around us at any point in this leadership journey, it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of resourcefulness and the fact we're planning ahead for the future. So that's what great leadership networking is all about. We'll talk about the details of it later, but if we have that, we're likely to be more successful because we can draw on it when we need it.
Lovely. Moving on, why is building a strong professional network? It's kind of an essential entity, especially with leaders today. Why is that?
We don't know when we're going to need some help. So I'll give you an example. It might be that I am thinking of entering a new market abroad from my current country, and I'm not sure how to do it. And 4 years ago, I was introduced to, through networking, an individual that lives in this country that I'm thinking about, that actually has built a business in that country, and actually would be very welcoming if I were to approach them to say, look, I'd love to tell you what I'm doing and see if you've got any advice. So that's just one basic example of a network contact 4 years ago that didn't mean anything at the time necessarily, who I've kept in touch with, where I can reach out to them to ask for advice. So that's why it's so important, essential now, because we're doing lots of things today that we don't know how to do, we're not sure how to do, and yet there's somebody out there that will know how to do it that we can rely on.
Well, with this lovely example, I think I can reiterate the fact that I started, this podcast with is your network is really your net worth, and your example really proves that. So moving on, how can leaders overcome the misconception that networking is only about personal gain?
It comes from, again, the intention of why we're doing it. So if we believe ourselves that the reason we're networking is because the benefit to both parties in the relationship, not necessarily right now, but it could be in the future, then when we approach that individual to be in relationship with them, we can do it from a position of curiosity. So it's not about that person looks as though they can give me something right now. It's about what am I curious about where this relationship might go in the future? How can it benefit that person? How could it benefit me? And let me start there in terms of the conversation. So it might be I approach somebody and say, hey, I see that you're newly appointed into this role. I was newly appointed 2 years ago. If you ever need any advice about what mistakes I made, then I'm very happy to get together. But we're building a relationship that's mutually beneficial. So if we can get away from this stigma that actually it needs to be something in it for me straight away, then that's the most important thing. The second thing that's important that people try and necessarily put as an excuse for not doing networking is that I don't want to impose on people. People's time is very important. But we shouldn't decide that for them. We should reach out to somebody and say what it is that we're really clear about that we think the relationship will benefit from, and let them decide the importance of their time, not us. So that's the second mistake that we make. And then the third is, when we're networking, is that we feel sometimes I have nothing interesting to say to this person or offer, they're not going to want to talk to me. Why would they? And the fact is we just don't know. So we've got to get rid of that in terms of that belief before we actually move on in terms of the relationship. So there's some of the things we need to get rid of and come from this place of curiosity.
Lovely. Thank you so much for shedding light on these wonderful, I would say, topics and innovations also as such that we have. So moving on, leaders already have a very amazing career. That's probably, at the pinnacle of their career. That's how they become leaders. But what role does networking play in their career growth and leadership development?
So there's a great example from the past where if we think about what we want to be doing in the next 5 years, the only way we can really achieve that is start to try and behave in that way and be with people who are already in those kinds of environments. So for example, if I am a leader in a contact center environment right now and I want to become the customer services director in the next few years, I need to start making network contacts now that are either already customer service directors or they're people that are peers of customer service directors, even though I'm not in that role right now. And the reason that's important is because if I start behaving and acting around those people, I'm going to get lifted up in terms of the way I'm perceived and the kind of conversations I'm going to be having. So the beauty of networking right now for your future is network with the people that you'll need in 5 years' time or where they might need something from you.
True. Andrew, you really focused upon the kind of limiting beliefs that we generally have while expanding our network. But I wanted to understand that, the limiting beliefs are one thing, but there's also a trust factor also that we generally, brush off with, I would say. So how can leaders build trust quickly with new connections?
There's two aspects to this. The first is when we approach somebody for the first time or we've been referred, and we usually say things like, yes, I can help you with that. I'll send you this. I'll make sure I drop you an email. So the first thing to build the trust is to do what you say you're going to do. So many of us offer to be helpful with good intentions. We want to seem as though we're being in a good frame of mind for somebody and in a good light, but follow through with those either the day after, a week after, but make sure you do it. That's the first way of building trust. The second way, when we're building trust, either early on in a relationship or later in the relationship, is to actually show this vulnerability we've talked about in the past, where we actually admit to that person in the relationship that we're either not sure about something, we'd love their advice on something, we know they've been in the same situation, and for us to basically learn something from them. So we show that vulnerability that we don't know everything. And those two things combined, where we were shown to be reliable and the vulnerable, will build trust very quickly. We build trust in the trust bank, and it means that when we come to draw on the trust bank, in terms of asking for something from them, there's always this obligation from them that they feel that they should reciprocate because of the way we've been with them.
Wonderful. So moving on, I really wanted to understand that, what strategies can help leaders to plan or build their network more authentically and not very transactionally.
This is really interesting because we have AI at the moment who is supposedly helping people to network. And the problem with AI helping people to network is it becomes very robotic and factual and boring in terms of looking for common ground. So the answer to your question, Sandy, is we've not got to lose sight of the fact that as human beings, the way that we relate to other people and therefore have confidence in building network is by having some kind of human connection. I'll give you an example. This is a very basic one today that I was networking with through LinkedIn, which I know a lot of people will do. I'd noticed that the individual I was networking with, who I didn't know, shared the same birthday with me because it's available on LinkedIn. I could have talked about in my message about the fact the business that they ran or where they were living or whatever. But all I said is we share the same birthday. It'd be very interesting to understand where you're at right now. And so it's a human connection, like you would when you're down in the cafe or in the society and community. So the secret really is about keeping it human. Don't make it too mechanistic. Don't try too hard. Look for connections in family, in birth dates, in schools, in lifestyles, in where we've moved to different countries, and just share those experiences because they're the things that actually will, in terms of strategies, be more effective.
So true. And thank you so much for, sharing this episode of yours. And I must add to it, no matter what happens, no matter how much kind of, AI stuff you use in your networking, it literally comes out that it's not you who has done it. I think it's too much available there that somehow you do understand, and probably it's the kind of the writings they use, or it could be in grammar also, I would say. They're way too perfect. So moving on, I really wanted to understand that how important is diversity in a professional network? Like, is it really important, or you should, probably cordon yourself to or restrict yourself to a certain geography?
I think diversity is really important for some of the reasons we talked about before. So if you think about your network, if you've got similar people in your network to you who live in the same place, all you're ever going to get is similar views to the ones that you share. Whereas if I have your network, like my network is continental. So I have contacts in India and in the United States and in Asia, various places. And when I come for a different view or some advice, I've got a very different perspective, and they value my perspective because they're not living in the UK right now and want a sense of what's going on. So the answer to the question really in terms of building professional network is looking again about how useful it could be to that person or you over the next 5 years, and try and get it as diverse as possible, because that's where we have the biggest learning.
All right. So talking about, having a diverse network, how can leaders effectively leverage their network during a challenging time?
This is really interesting, and this only works if we built trust in the trust bank that we talked about before. So if I have given time to you in the past and you've asked me a question, I've come back quickly, I said I would do something for you, I've done it, and not asked for anything in return, even if it's 2 years after I've done those things, and I write to you and say, Sandy, I've got a challenge at the moment, I'm thinking about this, I'm not really sure what to do, could you spend 10 minutes over a quick video call? You would say yes, because of everything I've done, prior to that. And not because I'm doing it so I can ask for something in return later on, because I genuinely wanted to help and see what I could offer you at that point. So it comes about where it comes from in terms of intentionality again. Be generous with your own time. Be curious about how the other person in front of you could benefit from what you have to offer. And then in the future, it becomes very easy to ask for that support when you're feeling challenged, because they automatically feel as though they can help you.
True. So that completely means that the trust bank is one of the most important factor here in networking. Yes. So moving on, what is the difference between using your network but not exploiting?
This is really
and how do we
point.
maintain it? Yes.
Yeah. So this is about how it feels for us, but also about the way we behave. So there are some people who we've come across in our lives who haven't spoken to us for about 4 or 5 years. They haven't built any trust, and they suddenly come into our world and they ask for something. Could be money, an introduction to somebody, an opening somewhere. And then they go away and they don't say thank you. You never hear from them again. And that's it. That's exploitation. Okay, so that only comes from a place of selfishness and not wanting to build a network. It's about just somebody who takes all the time. And that's what networking isn't about. Networking is about this give and take. And it might be I actually give 5 times to someone in terms of relationship in a network before I take anything. So that's what exploitation is. When we're actually using a network properly, it just feels more like a peer-to-peer in terms of the relationship. It feels that we can give each other something at some point, and yet we're not expecting it. So it's about how it feels, but it's also about where it comes from. So be generous, be intentional, make sure you're curious, and make sure you're always thinking about, if you were in their shoes, what would you benefit from if you were speaking to me right now that you could offer? And that's a great place to start.
And, moving on, I wanted to understand that, we've really understood the difference between using the network and exploiting it. But are there certain other practical steps or ways that as a leader, one can literally add value to somebody else's network, I would say?
Yeah, I've done this before, and I think other people can do this. So a lot of people like going to educate others about their own journey. So it might be their own story, it might be their development through a career, it might be some of the challenges they faced. And you can go on various public speaking circuits to do this. It could be online or face-to-face. And at that point, there's an opportunity to speak to the audience and say that if you would like to get in touch, to share more about this journey, then I'm very happy for you to do so. And it just means if you invite people into your network who relate and resonate with your own story, it's more likely they could also benefit from your network in the future. So again, it's about being generous. It's about making sure the people who join your network, there's some kind of resonance. And I really encourage people to do that. Tell your story, go on podcasts, go on different public speak. Could be local, community, it doesn't matter. Share the story and invite people to join your network.
Yeah, that's very true. It could be like a mentor or motivator,
Yeah.
anything that could really help others. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, that's social media.
Yeah.
We cannot skip it. So, how has social media changed the way leaders build and maintain their networks today?
I think there are two sides to this. I think there's a social media side, which is about clickbait and sales and marketing, which is what you're referring to, I think. And that's whether that's Instagram, whether it's TikTok, whether it's all the different forms of media, Facebook for some of the older people listening to this, where it's obvious that there's something going on to try and promote things, which is fine. And therefore people join causes or the actual reason for the postings as opposed to the people. I think LinkedIn is very different, and people will relate to that who are listening to this and watching this. LinkedIn was set up as a networking social media site, and therefore the only reason that people were on it really originally was to build network. Now, it has morphed a little bit, so you see a lot of people selling on there now, but it's also a way to educate others. So I still use primarily LinkedIn for networking and connecting to people and communicating with people. And I think it's the last bastion of where social media can support people globally to develop relationships. But we do need to be aware of how the others actually blur that, and they're not proper relationships.
And actually, it's one of the most authentic way also of letting people know what you really do. Instead of just boasting about yourself, very authentic also. People can literally see your journey out there.
Yeah.
So moving on, what role does networking play in building your personal brand? And I'm sure you can really throw some good light on you because you really have your own personal brand as well.
No, thank you. And let's think of everyone that you've ever spoken to. So you, Sandy, everyone listening to this and watching this. Whenever you've spoken to them, either verbally in a room, online, or with email or LinkedIn message, they would have formed an impression of you because they've been in relationship with you for that moment. So it could have been 2 minutes, it could have been for 2 years, whatever it is. And therefore, all of those people that you've ever had contact with who know you for who you are have a view on you and your brand. And when I ask somebody who knows you, what's Sandy like? I was thinking of contacting Sandy and just seeing, whether she could help me with this. That person is your brand. So we've got to make sure and recognize that everybody we speak to, everyone we network with, has an impression of us and the value that we can give and how authentic we are. And they are the people that promote us. So they are promoting our personal brand every day. We've always got to remember that. So treat everyone as well as you can.
That's very insightful, actually. Just not us. It's everybody whom we connect with and the way we behave and probably respond to. It's so interesting and very insightful. Thank you so much for that. So talking about leaders, how can leaders become valuable connectors within their communities and their organizations as well?
So I think this happens to a leader when they get to a certain stage in life of maturity. And I don't mean age. I mean in terms of maturity as a leader. And we've all said it at some point in our lives where we've achieved certain things and we want to give something back.
True.
So usually when we're getting to a certain point in our lives, we tend to try and look for network contacts that can help us. And then we help them at some point. What you're talking about here is we've got to a place in life where we don't necessarily need the network anymore. We're self-sufficient, we're resourceful, we're feeling fulfilled. But actually we've got so much to offer through our network that we then start looking at mentoring, coaching, public speaking, getting involved in communities, investing in projects, contributing to charities, being a philanthropist, whatever it might be. And what we bring with us is our own network. So that when a charity says to me, when I'm speaking to them, we need an investment of this because of our new community hall that we're building, and I happen to know somebody in my network that lives locally and is interested in doing that, that's where I'm adding value in the local community. But I can only give them access to that if I am actually interested, engaged, and wanting to give back. Because it's very difficult if I'm very busy and focused on my own career and somebody comes and asks me for access to that network, I'm just not going to have the time to do it. So that's the way that leaders at some point in their career, they'll know when, everyone listening to this will know when they can give more back to their community and their wider organizations.
But that's very true, irrespective of whether it's east or west. But, for leaders also, that really comes a threshold in their life after a certain success that they've always wanted to attain, that they really want to give back to the society. And that's one of the most, I would say, common thing that really connects a leader across the globe.
I agree.
So moving on, is it necessary when somebody starts their networking journey to have a specific goal in their mind a kind of a roadmap, or could you just get up and start, oh, let me just start doing this today?
I think it depends who you are. So there are some people out there who really love having goals and targets. And I think if you are that kind of person, I think it's really good to set yourself a goal and a target of having a number of people that you connect to in a network who are certain types of people that you might need around you in the next 5 years. So thinking ahead again, not about just now, thinking ahead, and giving yourself a number, whether that's 10, 20, 30, and then trying to do that through LinkedIn or publicly face-to-face. So I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's a good driver for some people. There are other people who are not driven by goals and targets. And it's about thinking about who can I help today? Who might benefit from my help today? And almost do that in the moment in that sense. So it might be I did it today. I bumped into someone I know very well in a very strange place that I'd never been there before. And we just started chatting. And immediately he wanted to help me. I wanted to help him. And it was spontaneous. We didn't have a target to do that. So I think both are fine. I think if you're in the latter camp, what it means is it's probably going to build more slowly, but it's going to be probably more authentic and probably more valuable to you over time than if you're driving through purely through targets. So I think a good mix of both.
Wonderful. So talking about you, we have not spoken much about you and your leadership journey as such. If your network reflects your leadership journey, what story does it currently tell? And what would you want it to tell in the future if you look at a network today?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. So I think my network has changed over the years to be much more thinking about the future. So who are the people that I might be able to help in the future? I might not be able to help them right now. And therefore the network over the last 2 or 3 years reflects that. The network in the past has been very much around people that are peers of mine, that maybe didn't need any help, and we just were in the same kinds of fields. So I think that's how it's changed. I think about the future, and I certainly know there are people in my network now that if I were to ring them or drop them a note next week asking for some specific help, I've put enough into those relationships where I know they would actually pick up the phone quite quickly and say, Andrew, how can I help you? I think that's changed a lot from earlier in my career when I was probably taking a bit more from the network early on. And I think that just comes with maturity and how you build the network. So that's been my story. Now I can probably pick up the phone. There's a great thing, isn't there, which you know, Sandy, about the 6 degrees of separation model with, I think it's Kevin Bacon. And so we know we can access President Trump or anybody in the world through 5 different relationships and get to that person just through networks. And so I think I could probably at a stage now where I could do that now.
And irrespective, of East or West, your network is quite intimidating also to others sometimes.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So on that wonderful note and a beautiful note, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us again on TALRadio. It's been a wonderful episode and a wonderful session. And I'm sure all the people who are listening to us at the moment, or probably in the future also, would certainly take a sneak peek into their network and see what they're really doing about it. All right. And thanks a ton to my lovely audience, and keep on listening to TALRadio.